Welcome to My Creative Brain. Today I am talking to Gigi Jones. Gigi is an artist based between the valleys and the south of France. She grew up abroad with Scottish parents and moved to Wales to study art at university. She does regular exhibitions and collaborations with musicians and theatre projects and is also a community art tutor. We're going to have a chat about creativity and well-being, and there's even going to be an activity for you to try at the end. Hello and welcome to My Creative Brain.
Hi, Maddie.
How are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks.
So the first thing I want to talk to you about is your earliest memory or memories of being creative, doing art, anything like that.
Well, when are you first aware that you're creative? I think maybe it's in retrospect, really.
Mm-hmm.
But I do remember being very aware of colour from a very young age. And a good example of that is probably a very strong memory I've got of when I went into hospital about age three, to have an eye operation. So that involved being blindfolded for a couple of days.
Ooh.
And my mum would read me stories and describe things. And I've got very strong memory of the illustrations in the book that she was reading and very distinct colour of the yellow bowl that I was eating scrambled egg out of.
But this is when you'd had your eyes done in
so
hospital.
I couldn't see, but I was
You were
very
imagining
kind of
it.
excited by the whole colour and the illustration that was being described. And I was always really, as a child, I just loved disappearing into book illustrations.
Yeah.
I spent hours just looking at the drawings and disappearing into those worlds rather than reading the words.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. There's obviously, most people have seen, is it Quentin Blake who did the Roald Dahl one? So I reckon that's probably the most famous illustrator I can think of.
I couldn't tell you any specific, although I do remember Alice in Wonderland. I used to get frustrated that Tenniel's drawings were all in black and white.
Yeah.
And I wanted them to be in colour.
I mean, if anything should be in colour.
Yeah.
Alice in Wonderland. And you've got some nice colour on today as well.
Yes, subtle for me.
Very nice. So that's like when you're very, very young.
Yeah.
How old do you think you were when you actually sort of started to think of yourself as an artist?
Probably as a teenager, because I had a very inspirational art teacher. He happened to be my only teacher who wasn't my parent. But he was really cool, passionate about what he did, and it was kind of infectious.
Yeah.
And he was always very encouraging and gave me the idea that I could do this, and he would forever present you with new little challenges, new materials to try out, that kind of thing. Yeah, I owe a lot to him, I think.
I think it could be really difficult if you were interested in something. Like I had good art teachers in school as well. Shout out Mr. Bid.
Yeah.
But like if you were into something and a teacher that just didn't encourage you, that would be really difficult, wouldn't it?
Yeah, yes, I think so. And my maths teacher was a bit like that, the one who wasn't my parent.
That's why you're not a mathematician, obviously.
Yeah. Yes, I think children are very, very affected by the message, whether it's spoken or just implied, about whether they're good at something or not.
I think a lot of people get that thing of thinking they can't draw as well.
Oh, so many people, they haven't done it as a career path. There are too many people who think, oh no, I'm not creative. But we all are. We all are.
Exactly. Creativity as well is something that I find, lots of people I know find, is a way of dealing with certain things in life, like getting over things, or is kind of like a form of therapy. Would you agree with that?
Oh, definitely. It's quite a meditative process.
Hard to say.
It is hard to say. But you can disappear into this other world, even if it's not a specific project. If you're just in the act of creating, you are in another world. You're focused down on abstract things such as colour relationships and things like that.
Is there anything specific in your life that you can think, like art was a way of you kind of getting past it?
It's, for me, I think it's always been a bit of a challenge in terms of resolving a project, resolving a practical brief then, whether it's one I've set for myself or for somebody else. working through the process of trying out different ways of approaching something or thinking about something, you quite often come up with ideas that you wouldn't have before. And then when you actually arrive at the solution or a solution, it's hugely satisfying.
So a career in art might not have been something that you necessarily considered when you were a teenager, when you were first starting to think of yourself as an artist. Obviously your art teacher encouraged you. Do you think you kind of predicted?
I think it's something I always wanted to do, because I always liked making things. That's making things, creating stuff, often from unconventional materials, but it's how I passed my time as a child and a teenager, and I always aspired to doing that as a career path. But my parents were kind of old school. You really need to have an academic qualification to get anywhere in this world and be respected. And I suppose we arrived at a compromise in that I did go and do a degree in visual art, but it had to be at a university for them, and it had to have French along with it. So,
but do you think that was important to you, that sort of academic stamp of approval?
Only in conversation with people from, say, academic paths that tended to have a little bit of a snobbery thing going on. You know, it's not a proper job, is it? Because you like it.
Who needs a proper job? I don't want a proper job.
But how many of us can say we actually do, as a job, something we're passionate about?
Exactly.
Or, you know, most people do things because they make money or they're sensible.
We're not sensible.
Yeah.
So how does art relate to well-being for you? Like,
I do know this, that if I'm not doing it, if I'm not creating something, I'm not really my best.
Do you think being an artist and making art is a big kind of part of your identity? Like, you need to be doing it in order to feel like yourself?
Absolutely, yeah. Because of the longer I'm not doing it, the more unsettled I feel. And when you're doing it, I think I said before, you kind of disappear into this other world, and you're able to find solutions to things that aren't related to mundane everyday, you know, have I done my tax return and all those boring things.
I have done my tax return, Just made me think then. I was like, no, I have done it. It's kind of same as music, and I guess more like songwriting, I suppose. It's just like a form of expression that is just different to anything else.
Absolutely, and there's a huge sense of achievement when you when you arrive at something unexpected as a result of that creative process.
So during the pandemic, it's been weird for lots of reasons, and quite weird for people's creativity. What has your creative life been like?
Very up and down, I have to say. It should be a gift, shouldn't it, for an artist? It really should, because we're used to self-isolating in the normal way of things. But I found it really weird, you know. One day I'd be really up and think, yes, I can go in there and I won't have any interruptions and get on with something. And then I'd find myself kind of totally at a blank, you know, just couldn't come up with anything, couldn't focus on anything. So I went from one extreme to the other, sort of a couple of days of manic activity in the studio, and then several more of not doing anything in there and finding every reason not to, and going out into the garden and doing that instead. And, you know,
do you think that's important though, to sometimes be doing something other?
Yes, yeah, probably, because your art, your making, is all about your whole experience, whether you're aware of it or not. You know, all aspects of your life feed into what you create, don't they?
Yeah, I was thinking about, you know, like obviously you're not seeing as many different things, you're not talking to as many different people when it's a pandemic and all those things kind of feed into your whole, they're like your inputs into your artistic machine. I've got a weird analogy going on here.
Yeah.
But with those gone, it's kind of...
Yes, well, I think I've found I've been probably on the internet too much, but there are pluses to that. There's quite a good artistic community out there. And more so, I think, since the pandemic started, artists are sharing with other artists and
I guess
commenting
to kind of
replace, more on what they're doing. Pardon?
To sort of replace if they can't be putting on exhibitions and stuff.
Yes, yeah, if you're not, because in the normal world, you're quite often meeting up with these people on projects or open evenings for exhibitions, that sort of thing. And that's where you get your colleague experience,
colleagues.
Yeah, weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a weird thing to think of colleagues. I just think of all the musicians I know as my friends.
Yeah.
I think
it also the whole experience has kind of made me more willing to experiment with materials, because I suppose I know I haven't got a deadline, so I don't have to produce a batch of decent looking paintings for a particular show, or because that's not happening. So you're kind of more willing to make mistakes, and of course that encourages progress, doesn't it?
Mistakes are very, very important. I'd say to any
absolutely.
Any
and
form
you
of
want to see how
creativity.
many mistakes. I've got whole piles and piles of them, but I have learnt from them for sure.
And sometimes that mistake will then become the thing that is
Exactly,
totally
it's
amazing
the thing you've
about
been
that.
waiting for all this time. So
So, in terms of like the lack of deadlines, the lack of things to work towards, not being able to work with people or anything like that, has that been a bit weird mentally speaking?
Yes, yeah, because you don't get that buzz from, collaborating with somebody. And one of the exciting things about working with other creative people, especially if they're, a different discipline, like an actor or a musician, is that you find their equivalents, and you kind of come up with ideas that you wouldn't on your own, really. Just
I
by
think there were a
sharing
lot
them.
of crossovers when we did a joint project in a place called Coyd Hills Rural Art Space. Big up Coyd Hills.
Yeah.
But it was basically just an experiment for a week, wasn't it?
Yes, but we always intended to go back, didn't we? And
One day. But we found so many correlations between art and music, which then kind of
absolutely
inspired us to go off in different directions.
Yeah. But I think I was probably at that stage still too affected by what I thought I ought to be doing or producing as a result. Whereas I think now, if we were able to self-isolate there and do it again, I reckon I'd probably come out with more,
You're going to go full crazy art lady when we do it next time.
Because it wouldn't matter, would it? Nobody's looking.
I think that's like a really important way to think about creating, because I do the same thing with songwriting. You're kind of always sort of thinking about that end thing. It's like just imagine, like, what if like nobody's ever going to see it or hear it, just make the thing that you fancy making.
Yeah
I think that would be very freeing.
Make the mistakes and be prepared to lose something that you really liked, just to see if you can make it go even further. Play with the idea even further,
Yeah. In terms of your confidence as an artist, do you find there are certain things that always boost your confidence or always bring it down?
Ooh, do I admit? Yeah, I have to admit that you are always going to be affected by the number of people who feed back with positive feedback. You can't help it, can you? It's a little pat on the back, it spurs you on. So I suppose in that respect, a lack of exhibitions and places to display your wares.
No audience, basically.
No audience. And yet it's a paradox, really, because you're not doing it for other people, really.
And those people can still be engaging with your art, because obviously you're putting more stuff up online now. Like you said, there's more people engaging with that who maybe wouldn't have gone to an exhibition anyway. Yeah,
maybe.
So on a day-to-day basis, what are the kind of things that make you want to paint? What inspires you to paint?
The same things that have always made me want to paint, and that is to try and somehow give form to the things that excite me in the things that I see, like a scene, a particular arrangement of colour, contrasting shadow, that sort of thing that makes you feel a certain way, but words just wouldn't be able to describe it adequately. So it's the challenge of trying to somehow evoke a particular feeling or reaction to something I've seen.
I can think of paintings of yours, I think, where you've painted the same thing at different times of day, and they have a totally different vibe because of the light and the shadows are completely different. Yeah.
Well, it's a little bit like stage lighting, isn't it? And sets. You're creating the scenario. Yeah. And it may be inspired by something you've seen at a particular time of day, but it might make you think more in terms of what's happening there to create that particular vibe, and how am I going to how am I going to put colours and textures and tones and things together to try and reproduce that. Yeah,
there's so many things that go into it. Again, same as music, there's so many technical details that go into this thing, and the end goal of that thing is kind of how it makes you feel while you're observing it or while you're listening to it, isn't it?
It's visceral rather than very literal storylines, or you can't really be specific about, well, this is when I was blah blah blah, and
it's not about everything just being hyper realistic.
No, it's more about the abstract qualities and the emotive power of particular arrangements of light and things like that, form.
And a lot of people are kind of put off the idea of trying to do art because they think they can't draw. They can't like realistically look at something and make a copy of it, like sort of really realistic pencil drawings that you see online or whatever. Well, what would you say to those people?
I think the education system's got a lot to answer for, because there are too many people who say that, and it's usually the people who haven't had specific encouragement, like the inspirational art teacher or the parent who bought them paper and pencils, or encouraged them in any way. I don't know what it is. Or maybe they had a classmate somewhere along the line who had all the praise and they didn't, so they just drew the conclusion that they were no good at it. Yeah. But it's just not true, is it? Because I think it's one of the most basic human urges, really, to create. Look at cavemen. Yeah. They weren't doing it to
your cave painting of a buffalo is way better. Exactly,
they had to make their mark, I think
there's too much focus on one or a couple of just specific types of art that people are like, oh, that's good art. And then if there's a child smooshing some paint around, they're like, oh, well, that's not art, but it is.
And yet, speak to most professional artists, there's one thing they often all say, and that is, I wish I could rechannel the child in me, because you just look at a young child before secondary school age, I would say, where they don't care what other people think. Yeah, they're just enjoying the process and really enjoying it, and not caring about whether it's correct by any measurable standard.
Or if you could just forget what you thought was correct, if you could just like erase that little part of your memory,
that's it. Yeah,
it'd be amazing.
And also, I think people who've had training in art have a disadvantage in letting go. Right? I've been on courses where people on the course have been a mixture of people who've never done it before and professionals. And the people who've never done it before are like sponges. They just seem to produce the most beautiful stuff straight away, because they haven't got all these rules and regulations in their back of their heads.
It's like, now what would be the correct thing to?
Oh no, this isn't complimentary. That's not going to
same with music.
Contrast. No.
Yeah, it's exactly the same. Why do you think people in general feel compelled to be creative in the first place?
Because they're human beings. and we're all of us unique and have our own thoughts and feelings, and you need an outlet, don't you? You need to find a way of expressing those, and the more able you are to do that, I think the healthier you are overall.
It's like therapy.
Don't you think? Yeah, in a way.
Free therapy. Well, I guess got to buy some paints, but
well, not necessarily.
No, that's true.
I mean, you can be creative with concrete, I've discovered.
Yeah, well, this is a sort of thing that I think about quite a lot for people who might say that they're not a creative person. You make so many creative decisions on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
For instance, which leopard print are you going to wear?
Exactly, yeah.
And like cooking.
Yeah, the way like you arrange things around you.
In your house, you mean?
Yeah. Whatever space you're in, you like things just so, and the person you live with might like them a slightly different way, so you've got to sneak it back.
What
everything you do,
Yeah, what sort of things like that do you think you enjoy on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, well, I suppose on a day-to-day basis, I mean, it could be a full-on studio day, so it's kind of obvious I'll be messing around with art materials. But on the days when I'm not in there, or parts of days, I find I've got to be doing something. I've got to be making something. So it's often out in the garden. Got to make something new I don't need, like a fire pit.
Everybody
just
needs
because,
a fire pit.
Because there's a pile of broken bricks that I had from my son that need to have something made with them, you know.
Yeah, and that's a thing that I think most people wouldn't consider to be a creative activity, like gardening. Not even.
But it is, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got an idea that you need to make materialise, and the creative challenge is, how are you going to do that?
I guess it's you have this idea of a thing that you want, and then you make it happen.
Yes.
And that applies to cooking a meal.
Exactly. It's all about making things happen, whatever medium you use.
Being able to imagine something and then making it exist.
Yes. Yeah.
I think we just defined what creativity is. So on a day, if you're feeling kind of blocked creatively, have you got anything that you would sort of turn to, like a go-to thing to kind of get your creativity flowing?
Just do it. You have to just do something with no remit. Don't say, oh, well, I've got to do that. I said I'd do that, and I prepared all those panels, and I've got all these expensive materials. Just do something. A sketchbook, for instance, doodle. And in doing so, the process will take you to the next little step. It's, oh, yeah, quite like those kind of marks. I wonder if I could develop that into such and such. It's only the doing of it that takes you to the next place, really.
Yeah.
Thinking about it and not doing anything about it doesn't get you anywhere, really.
I think the moment of starting is like the hardest bit.
It is, yeah.
Because once you've started, it's easy to carry on.
Yeah, making the third cup of tea and going to arrange things on the kitchen sink and maybe excuses for not getting started, but once you start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just got to take the pressure off in some way.
Yeah. And you're not doing it for anyone else but yourself. Don't compare yourself with anyone else. You are you and they are them. They would produce something completely different. It doesn't mean it's better.
And so if somebody is kind of thinking now, like, yeah, I really want to get started, I really want to do something, but they don't really know what to start with.
Yeah.
What would you suggest?
Start with what you have around you, I would say. And again, don't tell yourself, I really like that particular artist, I want to draw like them. Don't start with the idea you've got to be like someone else. Just start with the idea of playing around with what you've got to find out what you're like. And the more, say, sketchbook work you do, just doodling anything, the more you'll start to realise there are common threads that actually add up to you. You know, when I've seen you doing that sort of thing, it's usually wild colours and eyes.
Oh yeah, I love the colours.
Yeah.
It can be quite scary when you've got to start from nothing. So if you've got a blank canvas or a blank page in front of you, I think a lot of people find that quite intimidating.
Tell me about it. We all do. I can tell you, I have lots of blank pages and lots of blank panels and canvases waiting for that amazing piece of art. So I've set myself up for a fall there, really. Fear of the blank page is the worst possible thing. But you've got to make one rule, if you make no other rule, is that you're going to wreck it. Tell yourself you're going to make a mess if you like, that it's going to be the worst thing anyone's ever seen.
I like doing that with songwriting. If you're finding the pressure just too much, be like, I'm just going to write a really bad song right now.
Yes, and there's your ready-made excuse if you think it hasn't turned out. But we're not judging the outcome of this, don't forget. We're just doing it for the process, a little journey of discovery then.
So if you end up with a page that's not blank anymore, you've succeeded.
Exactly, exactly. Success. And every mark will tell a story, won't it?
Well, this leads us very, very nicely into the activity, challenge, whatever we're going to call this section.
Yeah. Don't be scared.
You'll be glad to know that I've brought some colours, some bright colours with me.
Yeah. Did you bring whatever you had around the house?
I did. So do you want to explain what we're going to do? Yeah,
so don't turn off at this point after I've said, folks, we're going to do some doodling. Basically, it's something, I've chosen that because it's something we can all do. It's something we've all done in the past, haven't we? On the phone board, in a meeting, somewhere where you're just waiting on something and you're not really thinking about what you're doing, you're doodling. And I think because it's something that you don't set yourself up as measurable, that something's going to be judged, you're not going to be judged by, everyone's going to be more willing to have a go. And by doing that, it's drawing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the more you do it, the more you are prepared to experiment, the more you'll start to realise what it is that you want to do in terms of art making.
Less pressure. It's doodling. It's not drawing.
Yes.
Okay, let's get some stuff.
Okay.
What are we doing?
Right, we're facing a blank page, aren't we? So with your pens that you brought with you, and I will use this tin that represents things you might commonly have around the house, not specialist art materials, biros, pencils and so on.
I've got brightly coloured pens. That's my vibe.
Just pick one, don't think about it too much, and just start making marks.
Okay.
And whatever mark it is, just ask yourself, well, what's this good for? Does it make sort of nice flowing lines?
There's a shadow on my page that I sort of want to
Maybe you have to try chase the shadow, see if you can catch it.
Looks a bit like a flower. It's actually a mic thing.
Can you make different kinds of marks with that one implement? Just by applying more or less pressure. Mine's run out.
That's a good start.
Try using it in an unconventional way, like the top, holding it at the very end so you haven't got any control. Try your left hand.
I'm going left hand and top.
Which I'm not going to do because I've got a mic in my left hand.
Drag it around.
This is really just a stream. It's not even a stream of consciousness. It's just automatic drawing, if you like.
I'm not even looking at it right now.
Yeah.
Just looking at you instead.
Closed eyes is quite good. And just keep going and keep trying out all the materials you might have around the house. So I've got an ordinary pencil here. How could I use that? I can use it on its side. I can use it conventionally.
And that colour
gives a completely different mark from the previous one, doesn't it?
Yeah, have I got one that would be like a different...
It's quite good fun if you're able to work on the same page as well as someone else, because I can kind of interact with your marks and you do the same with mine. We did a workshop years ago with about 10 people. It wasn't an art workshop. It was just kind of loosening up thing.
Yeah.
And a massive piece of paper on the floor with about 10 people around the edge. And we just started drawing anything, just like this. And then after 2 minutes, we had to move round.
Oh, like sort of passing it around.
Yeah. Consequences, if you like. And you just had to draw near or over someone else's piece so that, you couldn't be precious about it.
So that could be a fun kind of lockdown game in your house.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you live with someone.
Would you remember that old-fashioned consequences game?
Where you like write a line of a story each?
No, you have a piece of paper, you draw a head.
Oh,
no, you draw a hat, you fold it over, you give it to the next person, they draw a face and so on.
Yeah.
I mean, that's obviously got more of a game plan, hasn't it? But
I'm sure I heard that thing where you draw things one after the other like that. Isn't that actually something that some artists used to do? Like actual famous artists?
The consequences thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the surrealists used to try all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And in fact, they were...
This is a hand.
According to some people, instigators of the whole idea of automatic drawing.
Yeah.
Which is all to do with just letting it flow, missing your brain out, if you like.
Yeah.
And just allowing what wants to come along. So we're using just anything you might find around the house, aren't we?
I'm Sharpies because I'm a musician. I have lots of Sharpies and colouring pens because I'm a grown woman.
Yeah. I'm just turning back the page on one that was more advanced. It's hardly a work of art, is it? But just because I worked on it previously doesn't mean I can't go again and see what happens when I start adding other stuff in there.
Mine has become a very strange self-portrait because this started to look like a hand. That thing I drew a shadow of, and I drew some eyes.
Those eyes again.
So I've added a microphone and a weird nose.
Yeah.
It needs
that's
some
the
hair.
whole point, I think. What you start to see things, if you do it often enough, that repeat and do... They are a kind of signature, aren't they?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I've got anything recognisable in mine other than lots of angst. Angry marks, maybe.
Yeah.
I really like playing with texture.
Yeah.
And Tipex pens are quite cool for that too, just to going in over what you've done previously, if they work. Oh, sorry folks, that doesn't work.
I like doing dots like this. I always enjoy that.
Yeah. Have you got water-soluble pens there?
No, I've just got...
Because that's quite
normal
fun
pens.
too. If you...
Oh, yeah.
You'll find that some pens you have around the house are water-soluble, like biros quite often are.
Oh, yeah.
And if you start adding water to them, look, you can get all kinds of exciting things happening just to vary the line and the tone and so on.
So how would you decide when it's finished? Would you decide?
You don't need to, do you? It's just something you did then and there, and you may come back to.
Mm-hmm.
It's not meant to be a work of art, is it? It's not meant to be something that you're going to display in a gallery and proclaim to be...
Look at the art I did.
Yeah. It's just an expression, a personal workout then, if you like.
Yeah. Art workout.
Which could lead to something. I might discover, for instance, I quite like the way these marks are that I want to achieve in a particular piece I'm working on.
Mm-hmm.
I've moved on to this box, by the way, which is perhaps some
the more
materials
arty box.
You might not have, but aren't exactly expensive. These are children's woody pencils, and the great thing about that is they're really, really bold.
Chonky pencil.
And they are water soluble.
Exciting times.
Really exciting stuff happening.
I think there's something about like just really bright colours that is definitely my vibe.
Yes,
just bold. I don't like a faint mark. I like something that's just like, Urgh.
Well, you've got to go with what your gut tells you want to do.
Yeah.
I quite often in doodling I tend to avoid colour because I start to my art training kicks in. And I thought, oh no, I can't put that next to that, and I really need to tone that down a bit to make it work better with that. And
I mean, you can definitely see from what I'm doing, it's like all the colours at once, which is
it becomes too much of a conscious process if I do that. So I try to limit it a bit. And I do love playing with, somehow when you're just playing with black and white, you can have fewer
it all automatically
potential distractions,
goes, doesn't it? You don't start thinking about like, oh, does that go with that?
Yeah.
What if someone were to be doing this and they start just looking at it and being like, oh, it's not very good? What would you say then?
Well, if it's not very good, why isn't it very good? Because you're judging yourself against something. Whereas that's not the object of the exercise, is it?
No.
The exercise is just to do. And the chances are, this happens to me all the time, I'll leave it and think, oh, that was rubbish. And then when I come back to it, I think, oh, do you know, I quite like that. I really like that bit. Oh, I think I'll go back in and try a bit more of that. And that's the key. That's the key for the next locked door.
Do you like my... hang on, which way is the mic going? It's me.
The other thing you can do is perhaps be a little more radical. If you really think you're rubbish, how about getting some house paint?
I think a lot of people will have house paint at the moment as well. Everyone's been going to B&Q.
And an old credit card or shop card, and just think, I'm gonna cover up some of that and see what happens if I just make it into something else. You could almost cover the whole thing up, and the first thing you would have achieved there is ignoring your voice that says, no, you can't. No, you can't. Yes, you can. You can do anything you like with this, can't you? Doesn't matter. Just keep telling yourself it doesn't matter. But then, having pushed it a bit, you'll discover that you found perhaps things that you hadn't explored before, like that thick paint now gives you another kind of effect that you might not have discovered before.
So you mentioned doodling in the phone book before.
Yeah.
Do you think this would be good to do like while talking to someone on the phone? Like
Absolutely.
As a thing?
Definitely. Especially with those people you're on the phone to for a very long time. I used to do it a lot when I was speaking to my mother, because we generally have the same conversation each time we spoke. So how do you feel when you're doing this sort of thing? That hand looks so weird. I feel I've done a bit of exercise. You know how you've spent several days in the house and you haven't moved much, and you go out for a really nice walk. Yeah, nice energized walk. Well, I feel more energized and I feel encouraged because I can see things I enjoy. Even though it's not meant to be a finished thing, there are things I enjoy and give me ideas for where I might take it the next time.
I feel sort of semi-trance-like.
Yes. Well, it is meditative, isn't it? I mean, what other forms of meditation are there? If you're...
Your standard meditation.
Yeah.
I don't know, I guess like any sort of... Like I find it with playing instruments sometimes as well, as long as you take the pressure off. You're not trying to like deliberately achieve something.
Yeah.
You can just enter this weird state for ages, can't you?
Well, an artist I know a couple of years ago was working on something which some of the people around him thought was slightly bizarre, and that was breath drawings.
That sounds fun.
Exactly what you might imagine it to be.
Yeah.
He was working with soft pastels, and I think he was getting into Tai Chi at the time. And he just decided, how does that translate as a kind of automatic drawing? So he would make the mark with the breath. Yeah. Sort of out.
Oh, right. I thought you were meant he would be like blowing something onto the page.
No. So every mark he made he he tried to make in tune with his breath.
All right. Let's try it.
And I suppose the colours that he chose reflected with the kind of breathing he thought he was doing, you know.
It's making me do it slower if I try and do it.
Well, it's quite useful to have different, maybe, words in your mind that describe movement or energy. So what would an angry mark be? What would a... Yes. You see, if you had more than felt pens, you might just choose a different tool for that angry mark too, mightn't you? I mean, I'd really definitely go for the woody.
Yeah. Like a big old chunk of charcoal or something.
Yeah. But then something calmer, what would I choose? I might go for ink, if I can find my ink buddy.
Calm. Let's make a calm one.
Well, it's very black. It's not so nice. Something that flows better. Oh, that doesn't flow very well.
That's my calm one. It was very flowy.
And when you start to look at how different tools make different kinds of marks, then you'll appreciate more how those might apply in an intentional piece of artwork then.
Yeah.
You think, well, I've played around with that, and do you know, I think ink or watercolour might work better for that idea.
Yeah. Ooh, the light just went weird. Okay.
You just talk to that camera now.
Which one?
Maybe lean in just a touch.
That one?
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining me.
Can't we carry on?
I want to carry on. I'm quite mesmerised watching you do that. Well, maybe we'll go home. Maybe we'll just stay here and carry on doing this for like 10 hours. Thanks for joining me. And I'll see you soon.
Yeah,
see you soon. If you have had a go at this, or if you just would like to ask Gigi some questions about art, get her advice on anything, there is going to be a Zoom that you can join. Look out for details of that in the description, and we'll see you there. Join us next week when I'll be speaking to the brilliant actor, writer and musician Lucy Rivers.